The literary simple past in French, also known as le passé simple, is a past tense that describes actions completed and bounded in the past, which is similar to the compound past. However, the compound past is mainly used in spoken French, while the simple past is for written and formal French, especially in literature. The tense is directly taken from the Latin perfect tense, expressing completed past actions, and in classical Latin, verbs had perfect forms built into the stem. As Latin evolved into Old French, the forms were simplified, and thus French developed two coexisting past tenses, a simple tense and a compound tense. Its function is rare in spoken French, so it is common in novels, historical accounts, and classical literature, marking completed actions in storylines. Even though you may not use it as much in conversation, it's good to know for the comprehension of formality and stylistic shifts. In the remaining videos on the French past, I will mainly cover the grammar and semantics of the tenses. If you're interested in reading French literature, the examples in this video will be helpful, but the emphasis is on meaning, considering that it's not really spoken. So, there will be more examples in these videos than usual, because you may find phrases in the tense a lot more, as it's used for writing. To conjugate verbs in the simple past, there are three patterns. The first pattern belongs to regular ir verbs, which receive new endings. Let's use the verb parler, to speak. To conjugate it, we remove the ending from the stem and add the literary past tense endings. Je parlais, tu parlas, il, on parla, nous parlâmes, vous parlâtes, ils parlèrent. An example can be, il parla pendant une heure. He spoke for an hour. As you can see, the pattern is basic, with some conjugations using accents. The accents reflect historical vowel changes and are part of the standard written forms. The second pattern involves regular ir and re verbs, and they also follow a basic structure. Remove the ending from the stem and add the corresponding endings. As a note, for many verbs, the stem matches the present nous stem, which is a concept taken from the French imperfect, and I thoroughly explained it in a previous video. Let's see the verb finir, to finish. Je finis, tu finis, il, on finit, nous finîmes, vous finîtes, ils finirent. An example is nous finîmes le travail avant midi. We finished the work before noon. Now, let's see the verb vendre, to sell. Je vendis, tu vendis, il, on vendit, nous vendîmes, vous vendîtes, ils vendirent. An example is il vendit la maison. He sold the house. The third pattern involves the irregularity that the simple past has. Again, if you're interested in reading French literature, this will be helpful, but if you learn to speak French, this information may not be relevant. The most common irregular verbs in the simple past are avoir, être, faire, dire, prendre, voir, venir, mettre, lire, écrire, pouvoir, vouloir, savoir, devoir, boire, and recevoir. They are irregular due to their stem, and they commonly appear in literature. Keep in mind that this list covers the most frequent paradigms you'll see in French novels, so irregularity in the past simple comes from stem changes and not so much from endings. The most irregular verbs fall into one of these groups: ou stem, istem, ustem, or completely unique forms. Even when the stems are irregular, the endings stay the same as those used for ir and re verbs. So, once you memorize the verb's irregular stem, you can already know how to finish it. Here, I'll give quick examples with irregularities that come from each group, beginning with the ou stem and its conjugations in many verbs. As you can see, the U stem is prevalent in verbs that mainly end in ir. Avoir, savoir, voir, pouvoir, devoir, boire, recevoir. A different stem is I, and two verbs use it, venir and tenir. These verbs share the same endings and often appear with prefixes like devenir, obtenir, and soutenir. Another stem is I, and verbs that have the stem typically end in re. Prendre, mettre, écrire, dire, conduire. Aside from these stems, there are irregular verbs that have completely unique forms, like être, faire, naître, mourir, vivre. Tenir and venir can also fall into this category. In short, you can see the summary patterns of all verb conjugations in the simple past, which is why I said that a lot of memorization is needed in this tense. I chose not to pronounce the examples because the tense is mainly about historical writing, so it's not necessary to say it all the time. The best strategy is to memorize the irregular stems from the most common verbs. But again, this is done only in the context of reading French literature, if you're interested. Moreover, because the tense is simple with no auxiliaries or participles, there is no rule for agreement, which simplifies reading, and so the word itself is the conjugated verb. In narratives, short sequences of verbs in the simple past are typical in a literary context. Il entra, regarda autour de lui et prit la parole. He entered, looked around him, and took the floor. La ville dormait, seule la rivière murmurait. The town slept, only the river murmured. At last, you should know that pronominal verbs in the tense are formed by placing the reflexive pronoun before the verb and using the past simple of the main verb, like il se leva, he rose. Se lever uses the ir pattern. Overall, this is how the literary simple past fully works in French. It's used for literature and not in speech, and its conjugation patterns are basic. However, its irregularity is extensive in verb stems, which recur frequently in historical accounts. Don't forget about spelling accents, which are required in writing. And conclusively, in the next video, which will be the last about the French past, we will see the French anterior past.